About 150 kilometers west of Vienna stands Mauthausen, once one of the darkest sites of Nazi brutality. Built in 1938 near granite quarries, the camp quickly became a central pillar of Hitler's vision for the Third Reich. What began as a small compound of 4 barracks expanded into a massive 15-hectare fortress surrounded by electrified fences, watchtowers, and walls built from the very stone prisoners were forced to carry. From its earliest days, Mauthausen was designed not just for forced labor, but for destruction. Prisoners from over 40 nations, political opponents, war prisoners, Jews, Roma, and others targeted by the Nazis were brought here, stripped of identity and reduced to a number. Their daily life was marked by starvation, exhaustion, and constant violence. One of the camp's most feared locations was the quarry. Prisoners carried stones weighing up to 50 kilograms up the infamous Stairs of Death, 186 steps where a single fall could trigger a deadly chain reaction. SS guards used the quarry not only for labor, but for murder. At the parachutists' wall, prisoners were forced to jump to their deaths. Mauthausen became a center of terror because of places the SS tried to erase from history. Deep inside the camp stood the bunker, home to torture cells, execution rooms, and a gas chamber, where at least 8,000 people were killed. Their bodies were dissected for gold teeth, cremated, and their ashes discarded like waste. As the war intensified, the Nazis expanded the Mauthausen system into more than 40 subcamps across Austria. Nearby Gusen became even more deadly than the main camp. Prisoners worked in quarries, factories, and vast underground tunnels built for secret weapon production. In these tunnels, inmates assembled the world's first jet fighter, the Messerschmitt Me-262, and tested key components of the V-2 rocket, Hitler's so-called miracle weapon. Conditions were unimaginable. Thousands collapsed from disease, hunger, and overwork. Others were executed for the slightest mistake. SS officers like Karl Schmilewski, the Devil of Gusen, ran the camps with ruthless cruelty. In the final years of the war, Allied bombings forced the Nazis to accelerate underground factory construction. This cost thousands more lives. By 1945, tens of thousands had died across the Mauthausen system. Records, buildings, and evidence were destroyed in an attempt to hide the crimes. But some prisoners risked everything to save photographic proof. Over 2,000 images were smuggled out and hidden in a village wall, preserving crucial evidence of what truly happened. The story of Mauthausen does not begin with its gates, its barracks, or its notorious quarry. It begins with an idea twisted by hatred, engineered through bureaucracy, and executed with industrial precision. A system designed not merely to imprison, but to break, to exploit, and eventually to erase human beings. By the late 1930s, Europe was trembling under Hitler's growing empire. Nazi ideology needed 2 things to survive: labor and fear. And in the quiet hills of Upper Austria, near a village known for its peaceful fields and granite-rich slopes, the SS saw an opportunity to build both. The birth of a slave empire. In 1938, after the annexation of Austria, the SS forged a partnership that blurred the line between government and industry. The creation of Deadliest, the German earth and stoneworks company. Behind this corporate name was a monstrous vision. If political enemies could be turned into slaves, then quarries, factories, and construction sites could become engines of Nazi wealth. Deadliest was not a passive observer. It was a driving force. Its board meetings discussed prisoners as numbers, not lives. Its bookkeeping valued camp inmates by how much granite they could carry before collapsing. And Mauthausen was designed from the beginning as the centerpiece of this empire. This was not a camp built for reform, not a camp built for temporary detention. It was a camp built for destruction through work. Construction of a machine. Mauthausen rose fast. Stone walls, guard towers, floodlights, and barbed wire coiled together into a fortress of domination. At first, it was small, almost insignificant among the growing Nazi camp network. But its location next to the Vienna Graben quarry made it different. Every detail of the landscape promised profit, and every prisoner promised free labor. The SS needed no convincing. Their plan was simple: fill the quarry with prisoners, work them to exhaustion, and replace them as soon as they died. This brutal calculation led to the creation of something even worse: a camp hierarchy designed to control, divide, and terrorize the prisoners from within. Inside the hierarchy of survival, hours followed no logical pattern. Punishments came suddenly, and rules changed without warning. The SS did not want order. They wanted instability, fear, and confusion. Into this chaos, they introduced the capos, prisoners elevated to positions of power, given privileges in exchange for violence. Some capos became monsters. Others tried to protect those beneath them. But the system itself was designed to corrupt. A man could save his life only by becoming part of the machine, destroying the lives of others. There was no escape from this psychological pressure. Every day was a struggle, not only against guards, hunger, and freezing temperatures, but against the very structure of the camp that forced prisoners to compete for survival. The quarry, the true engine of death. At the heart of Mauthausen lay the quarry, a steep pit carved deep into the earth, where the ground echoed with hammer strikes and desperate breathing. The path out of the pit became infamous: the stairs of death. 186 uneven stone steps. Prisoners were ordered to carry huge blocks of granite, sometimes weighing more than the men themselves. Guards watched with amusement as exhausted prisoners stumbled. If a man fell, he would not fall alone. The stones rolled down, crushing bodies like dominoes of death. Many prisoners remembered the stairs as the place where hope died. Some were pushed, some jumped, some collapsed under impossible weight. The SS didn't need gas chambers here, although they eventually built them. The quarry was doing their work for them, expanding the empire of suffering. As Germany's war machine grew, so did its appetite for labor. Mauthausen expanded far beyond its original walls, spawning more than 100 subcamps across Austria. Factories, tunnels, armament facilities, each demanded workers, and the SS delivered them. Inmates were sent to build roads, dig tunnels, and assemble weapons. One such place, Schloss Hartheim, became infamous, using gas to eliminate those considered too weak to work. Mauthausen prisoners were transported there under the illusion of medical treatment. Instead, they were murdered and cremated, and their ashes disposed of like industrial waste. The SS kept meticulous records, numbers, dates, categories. Human life was reduced to paperwork. A world with no safe corner. Living conditions were hellish. Barracks built for 200 men housed 500. Disease spread fast. Food was barely enough to keep a man conscious, let alone strong enough to endure hard labor. Winter was a season of death. Snowstorms swept across the hilltop camp, freezing prisoners where they stood. Yet the work never stopped. Guards treated exhaustion as defiance, and defiance as treason. Everywhere prisoners looked, they saw the same truth. Mauthausen was designed to make death slow, inevitable, and profitable. Resistance in the shadows. And yet, in a place built for destruction, resistance found a way to exist. Some prisoners shared their bread rations with the weaker ones. Some sabotaged machines, even though they risked torture and execution. A secret network formed. Poles, Spaniards, Soviets, Jews, anti-fascist Germans, unlikely allies united by suffering and hope. Political prisoners smuggled information out of the camp. Others stole small pieces of data, copied documents, or memorized names to preserve evidence for the future. A few formed escape plans, though nearly all failed. The hills around Mauthausen offered nowhere to hide. But the greatest act of resistance was survival itself. Every day a man endured was an act of defiance against the system created to destroy him. The final phase, the camp that could not kill fast enough. By late 1944, Germany was collapsing. Mauthausen, once a tightly controlled system, became a desperate slaughterhouse. Trainloads of prisoners from other camps arrived daily, starving, diseased, many barely alive. The SS had no space to house them. They turned open fields into makeshift tents, then into mass graves. Some prisoners were shot outright, others were left to die. Food shortages worsened, and chaos consumed the camp. The SS became increasingly brutal, knowing their time was running out. Yet in this darkness, an extraordinary moment occurred. A group of prisoners, led by political activists, began organizing the final resistance movement inside the camp. They collected evidence, prepared for the collapse of SS control, and forged alliances with local civilians and the approaching Allies. And then, on the morning of May 5th, 1945, the nightmare finally cracked.
Liberation, a moment that arrived too late for most. When American troops approached the camp, they expected resistance. Instead, they found a place that resembled a city of ghosts. Tens of thousands of skeletal survivors, too weak to speak, too traumatized to celebrate. Bodies lay unburied. Barracks were filled with dying men. Medical rooms overflowed with untreated wounds. The liberators were horrified. No battlefield had prepared them for Mauthausen. Survivors described the moment as unreal, a mix of relief, disbelief, and grief for the countless friends who never lived to see freedom. What Mauthausen really was. After liberation, the world finally saw what Mauthausen represented. Not a prison, not a labor camp, not even a place of punishment. It was a factory where human beings were consumed for profit. Every part of the system, the hierarchy, the quarry, the subcamps, the gas chambers, the records, existed to serve two purposes.
As we step back from the story of Mauthausen, we are reminded that the past is never as distant as it feels. The stones of the quarry, the silent barracks, and the worn steps that once carried unimaginable suffering still stand as witnesses to a time when cruelty was engineered, systematized, and justified by those who believed profit and ideology outweighed human life. Yet the true legacy of this place is not only in the horrors it exposed, but in the strength of those who survived it, the individuals who rebuilt their lives piece by fragile piece, who carried the weight of memory so that the world could learn from what happened here. Their courage is a reminder that remembrance is not passive. It demands awareness, empathy, and the willingness to confront injustice wherever it appears. Mauthausen teaches us that hatred gains power when ordinary people stay silent, when systems go unchallenged, and when human beings forget that cruelty begins with something as small as indifference. Today, as visitors walk its quiet paths and reflect on its history, Mauthausen stands not only as a memorial, but as a warning, a promise carved into stone that the lessons of the past must guide the choices of the present. If we listen closely, the echoes of those who suffered here remind us to protect the dignity of every human life, to speak out against oppression, and to safeguard the future from the shadows of history. Thank you for watching, and thank you for remembering.